Welcome one, welcome all to our formal session of today. Honorable members of City Council, in accordance with the Virginia Beach City Code 2-21 and by the authority vested in me as Mayor of the City of Virginia Beach, and with the consent of the Planning Commission Chair, I hereby call for a joint special formal session of the Virginia Beach City Council and Virginia Beach Planning Commission, Tuesday, August 18th, 2020, 6 p.m., Virginia Beach Convention Center, 1019th Street. The purpose of the joint formal session is to allow City Council and the Planning Commission to hear planning items concurrently, which is necessary in light of prior advertising error. The City Council will consider the ordinances and resolutions listed in the printed agenda. Then immediately following the City Council and Planning Commission will proceed with the public hearings and consider planning items listed in the printed agenda. Citizens may comment either personally or virtually. If you would like to speak in person, please call the City Clerk's office at 757-385-4303 to sign up. If you wish to make comments virtually on the item, please follow the two-step process followed below. Register at the WebEx at http://vbgov.webex.com or register with the City Clerk's office by calling 757-385-4303 or email at abarnes@vbgov.com prior to 5 o'clock on the 18th of 2020. This joint special formal session will be streamed live on www.vbgov.com and Facebook Live and will be recorded for the rebroadcast on cable TV. Citizens are encouraged to submit their comments to City Council prior to the meeting and via email at citycouncil@vbgov.com. Sincerely, Bobby Dyer, Mayor. Greetings and welcome to everyone. I hereby call this special joint meeting of the City Council and Planning Commission to order. Okay, and at this point, I would like to, if we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we're thankful to be here today. Thank you for graciously being in our midst. We honor you in your presence. We're thankful, God, for this body. Thank you for keeping us and allowing us, Lord God, to be guided through these indeed turbulent and challenging times. Tonight, Lord God, we come together and we pray, Lord God, that the decisions that we make, Lord God, will be in line with what's best for this community, what's best for this city, because we indeed want the best. And so in that vein, we pray, Lord, that our decisions and all that we say, Lord God, would be in that vein. What's the best? And most importantly, Father, we pray that your will would be done. We thank you for every person represented here today. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty, thank you. Okay, at this point, do we have the roll call, Madam Clerk?
Mayor, we'll do a verbal roll call. Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Oh, I'm sorry. And council members and commissioners, please remember to push your on button of the microphone before you speak. And I'll go through council's roll call first, and then I'll go to planning commission members. Thank you. Councilmember Berlucci?
Present.
Councilmember Henley? Here. Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Present.
Councilmember Rouse?
Here.
Councilmember Tower?
Present.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Present.
Mayor Dyer?
Present.
All 11 members of City Council are present. I'll begin with the Planning Commission members. Commissioner Alcaraz?
Excuse me, should we do the approval of the minutes at this point?
No,
Madam
sir.
Clerk?
I need to do the roll call of Planning Commission, please.
Oh, okay, with the Planning Commission, my apologies.
Thank you. Commissioner Alcaraz?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnes is absent. Commissioner Costin? Commissioner Graham is absent. Commissioner Horsley?
Here.
Commissioner Inman is absent. Commissioner Klein?
Present.
Commissioner Redmond? Absent. Commissioner Wall?
Present.
Vice Mayor Weiner? Chair Oliver? I'm sorry, Ms. Chair Oliver?
Here.
Thank you. 7 members of the Planning Commission are in attendance.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to call for the motion for approval of the the minutes for the special sessions of July 31st, July 28th, and August 11th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
Sorry, I didn't hear who made the motion.
Okay, the motion was made by Mr. Wood.
Second.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And do we have a second? Okay.
Councilmember Abbott? Councilmember Lucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley? Aye. Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
I will let the record reflect that I left for the end of the meeting because I had recused myself due to the matter before the body.
Yes, sir, thank you. Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye, with an abstention for August, I believe it was the 11th. I was not present due to my father's illness.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11 to 0, you've approved the minutes as submitted, noting Mr. Moss's and Ms. Wooten's disclosures.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I want to extend a special welcome and thank you to the members of the Planning Commission for being with us tonight and for the next few meetings. At this time, I'm going to ask the City Attorney to explain why this joint meeting is necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you all know, the Planning Commission plays an important and indeed statutory role in vetting and making recommendations to the council regarding planning items that will come before the City Council. Part of the statutory process is a public hearing. By law, that public hearing must be advertised in the newspaper 2 times in the weeks leading up to the meeting. By statute, each advertisement is required to contain a brief description of each item being considered and then advise the public where they can go to look at the proposed item, ordinance, or amendment. Unfortunately, when COVID-19 hit us and city offices closed and meetings went virtual, the sentence in the advertisement telling people where they could see the item, ordinance, or amendment was accidentally omitted. This omission casts the validity of the public hearings and the recommendations made by the Planning Commission into question, and the only sure way to fix that is for the Planning Commission to hear those items again and make new recommendations. These joint meetings allow that to happen in a manner that minimizes the delay in the consideration of the affected applications. Again, we would say thank you to our Planning Commission, and I, on behalf of my office and staff, apologize to them for the inconvenience that this situation has caused them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stiles. Tonight we have several items on our agenda. At this time, I will ask the City Clerk to outline the proposed process and procedures for this joint meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council will begin by taking up non-planning related public hearing and the ordinances and resolutions on the agenda according to its usual process. Some items may be considered for approval on a consent agenda. Any non-consent ordinances and resolutions will be heard and decided by the Council after the consent agenda is adopted. There will be a separate consent agenda vote for planning items. The Mayor will then open a public hearing on the planning items. The public hearings for the planning items will be a joint public hearing. Speakers will be addressing both Planning Commission and the City Council, and members of either body may pose questions to the speakers. Although the public hearing will be conducted jointly, each body's deliberation will be separate, with the Planning Commission going first. At the outset of the public hearing on the planning items, I will identify those items where there are no speakers or only one speaker registered other than the applicant. For any item where there is no speaker other than the applicant, that item may be placed on a consent agenda for both bodies unless a member of either body requests that the item be pulled for separate consideration. If there is a request for an item to be pulled, that item will be heard by both bodies. When only one speaker has signed up to speak on multiple items, I will call the speaker forward and they will be allowed to address each of the items. The speaker will have 3 minutes per item. These items may also be placed on the consent agenda unless a member of either body requests that one or more of them be pulled. The applicant will have an opportunity to speak for their item if there's a request to remove the item from the consent agenda. The Planning Commission will then consider its consent agenda, followed by the City Council. Thereafter, the public hearing on the remaining items will take place. After all speakers have been heard on an item, the Planning Commission will deliberate and vote on that item. After the Planning Commission adopts its recommendation, the Council will then deliberate and vote on that item. And then the process will repeat until all items have been heard.
Okay, and does any member of the council or planning commission have any questions or concerns regarding the process that was outlined by the clerk? Okay, don't see any hands. Then we will proceed with the public hearing on the appropriation of the second distribution of the CARES Act funds, coronavirus relief. Are there any speakers?
Yes, Mayor, we have one speaker, Barbara Messner.
Good evening. I object to the explanation by the city attorney who works for y'all. I think it's outrageous that we can't even see y'all. It's worse than being in council chambers. On the CARES Act, you're continually getting money from Northam. He gets it from the federal government. And you're getting money for things that you should be taking care of. Especially the police, fire, and rescue. They've been asking for pay raises and all kinds of things. They have to work second jobs, and they do get a lot of overtime for these meetings. But, yeah, I would like an explanation because people that were going to watch online were not able to watch. I don't know how long you weren't on Facebook. This happened with the Hillard Hines investigation. I think it's like $30 million that you pay for IT, but you give them too many things to do. And the agenda was on sporadically. It wasn't on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and early Monday until I called Kevin Fairley. Like I said, and this document, it was signed on August 3rd. Today's August 18th. And you amended a meeting instead of rescheduling it. Mr. Dyer is still not signing, Robert M. Bobby Dyer.
Yeah. Excuse me, Mr. Wood?
Pardon?
Okay, this is not germane to the public hearing, with due respect.
Okay, the mayor's signature. I will not use your name. The mayor's signature.
We're talking about the CARES Act funding.
I am. This is the document that you declared. Okay. This is the document. The signatures. No witness, no notary, no seal. I object to the lack of due process. A lot of this stuff was rescheduled from August 4th. This says canceled. This says reschedule for a later date, and it was added to another meeting. So, yeah, I don't object to taking care of our first responders. I've stood up for them since '93. It's just where the money comes from and the fact that you don't balance their budget and take care of them yourself. I think it's the duty of City Council to take care of all employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speaker?
Sorry, Mayor, that's all the speakers.
No other speakers? Mr. Moss?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have an item to add to the consent agenda. This is a resolution. I'm not going to read it in full, but it's consistent with what we discussed in the executive session. Resolution adding a member to the community task force, going from the 15 members that were adopted on July 7th of 2020 to add a 4th citizen at large to that task force. And this is
Okay.
what I'll submit. It's an ordinance change.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Okay. Madam Clerk, do we vote on it?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley? Aye. Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, this item has been added to the agenda.
Okay, at this point, I would like to read the speaker's policy. I want to remind everyone that the City Council speaker policy that allows certain representatives of groups to speak for 10 minutes applies only to planning items. All other speakers, whether speaking individually or on behalf of a group, will have 3 minutes to speak. Speakers are reminded that comments during the formal portion of the meeting must be limited to the subject of the item that is being considered by council at the time you are called. When speakers are called on each item, the clerk will call for those individuals who have signed up to speak. After those who have signed up to speak have spoken, the chair will ask if there are any other persons who wish to speak on the item at hand. Those speakers will be allowed to speak and will be asked to give their name, address, and telephone number for the clerk to record. We've had several items when only one speaker signed up. As such, the city clerk will call the speaker and identify each item that has been registered on. The speaker will receive 3 minutes to comment on each item. Again, the speaker must limit his or her comments to the subject matter of the items they have signed up to address. Finally, I call upon all speakers and all persons in the chamber to be civil in their discussions and decorum. Whatever views you hold and wish to express, the City Council wants to hear from you and to ensure that all viewpoints and all persons are respected. The best way to do this is for all to strive for civility and respect. Okay. At this point, I think we're ready for our consent on ordinances and resolutions. Mr. Wood?
We have one speaker signed up on each
Okay, we have
ordinance
the
and
one speaker.
resolution.
Okay.
Barbara Messner, she has signed up on each of the ordinances and resolutions listed in the agenda. On ordinance and resolution, she did that. I'm dealing with ordinance and resolutions right now. Has to be 2 separate consents.
Okay, I did skip a few, but
The first item I have is number 1, confirm the declaration of local emergency.
right. Flooding. The reason we have flooding is because we have 40, 50-year-old storm drains that haven't been taken care of. And some of the items on these agendas, okay. Yeah, these pictures have been sent to y'all. Nothing's been done. This is the storm drain in Red Wing, which is clogged I don't know, where's the camera today? I didn't even ask. I think it's over there, right? This is a storm drain in Red Wing. I've sent y'all pictures, and there was a supervisor there. I don't know if they're putting wood in here or what, but everything flows from the ocean front to Red Wing, to Dam Neck, and goes out in the ocean. And this is why we have so much flooding. And you have things on the agenda. So this will be in planning. But I think it's important that nothing should be approved when you haven't fixed the infrastructure, not even after Hurricane Matthew. You just fix the ocean front, you put in new pipes at the ocean front, you buy $11 million for pumps for Asheville Park, and they're used at the ocean front. You send trucks out to suction out floodwaters in some areas. Okay, and that's on the tropical storm. Okay, the CARES Act, I've already spoken on. 3 is additional transfer funds to various departments, reference hazard pay and volunteer recognition. The city should have money. We shouldn't have $3 billion in debt. We should be prepared for all these disasters. You shouldn't be building and creating some of the flooding. Okay, 4, and like I said, the agenda was offline most of the weekend. It was reported to 2 of the 311 operators. And Kevin Fairley noted it, and it was up Monday. But it's kind of hard to go through 513 pages and read them all. So I don't know what the amending the city code, leave accrual by part-time employees, you know, all of this isn't COVID related, and you're putting a lot of things on the agenda that don't apply to COVID. And, okay, and 5, the only reason I'm speaking on 5 is encroachments onto city property. You're encroaching on city property all over the city. For people to, and like I said, this is, you're planning to put more mixed-use condos next to the Harris Teeter, where it's been flooding since you built it in the 90s. You took over wetlands, and the wetlands where the ducks hang out, you plan to build something on that. And this, you can't even cross the sidewalk. This is where the infrastructure is going. You should not have these things on the agenda, and planning people who shouldn't even put things on the agenda when they know that the property isn't fit for, and we don't have a system to take care of the storm drains. Okay? I wish more people would show up. You'd never know that there were other people running for city council because they don't read the agenda, they post on Facebook and all that silly stuff. Okay, 6. City-owned drainage. Construct and maintain light double-sided monument sign. I don't know what the need for that is during this COVID, and why you need a sign. I think there's 400 pump stations, and most of them do not work. That's why they had, I think it was 92 million gallons of sewage flowing across Laskin Road after Matthew. That still floods. It's never been fixed. Okay, 7. Amend and adopt capital improvement program, CIP project, and scope for CIP, dome site, acquisition. You're acquiring land. I think it's 9 or 10 million, and you want to ask for help. The dome site is taking over 2 municipal parking lots. And it's flooded there, and I oppose it. It's been a wave project. It's right across the street from the ocean front. The wave doesn't work. They changed it. I don't know how many different incarnations. And Venture Realty is affiliated with this, and we have letters from, which I don't know if I'll bring up during planning, but letters from Jim Wood, Rosemary Wilson, and Louis Jones, who repeatedly have conflicts and abstain, but it's never enough people abstaining to vote no. You still vote for all these projects that are destroying the quality of our city. Okay. 8. 460,000 people, and people complain and no one shows up. Okay. 300,000 from Landmark Foundation, Public Health Department operating budget, authorize 5 grant-funded positions for a baby care program. The city is not responsible for everyone's child in the city. They don't even take care of the adults, and they don't take care of anything. $350,000, it's like 250,000, 300,000. We have debt. Where does this money come from? And you haven't closed the beaches. You ask for more money for advertising. The beach is wide open. People can come from any hot spot in the country. And then you complain about COVID. And you keep using COVID to transfer money from your buddy Ralph Northam. Okay? B, ordinance B, 10,000 from Virginia Tourism Corporation. Convention and Visitors Bureau operating budget reference local advertising and marketing efforts. Okay, you spend a fortune, the city, the state, the convention center, you spend a fortune on advertising and marketing. Prior to the 90s, when we started having problems with rowdy behavior, which wasn't addressed, we didn't have crime. We didn't have to advertise. We had nice families come here. We didn't have people that were not behaving well, and it wasn't safe for people at the ocean front. Okay, C, 47,187 from National Park Service, Historic Preservation Fund. Transfer 28,312 to provide local grants, free money. Planning and Community Development operating budget, survey of historical resources in SeaTac, L&J Gardens. The Cavalier Hotel was granted historic preservation. They didn't restore the Cavalier. They destroyed the grounds, and then they were given by City Council an extra $6.5 million for additional hotels. It's an ambassador hotel. I forget if it's townhouses, condos. We're subsidizing developer Bruce Thompson and Bart Fry and who knows who all. Okay. So, the historic preservation is not preserving anything. We don't have any land, any open space. It's just converted into something else. And I don't appreciate the lack of due process on the statue. $250,000 on a Saturday to remove a statue. When we had a meeting here and people, ask at City Council and they ask here in front of planning. to preserve it. And there was no reason to take it down. If you can't protect it and you can't protect the people in Building 2, then y'all aren't doing your jobs. Okay, D, $22,500 from Virginia Department of Historic Resources. Transfer $22,500 to provide local grant-free. Y'all have never heard of a loan except for town bank loans to developers. Okay. Planning and Community Development Operating Budget. Like I said, you can't even run a meeting properly. You have the people doing so much that they can't even, have Facebook working, and I just think you need to get back to basics. All right. E, CARES Act funding. Reference Department of Elections, voter registration and elections. Health and safety expenditures for the presidential election. Okay, I forgot to bring the piece of paper. In 2016, Sessions was still here. He sent out a notice that you would not have a meeting and for everyone to enjoy their privilege to vote. You have a meeting scheduled on November 3rd. That is outrageous. Our police, our first responders need to be at the polling stations because of all the problems we've had. You should not be having a meeting then. Okay. F. $1,389,000 CARES Act fund. You're having a heyday getting money from Northam that the federal government's giving him and he's taking credit for, and so are you. From Department of Housing, HUD. All these mixed-use projects that we don't need. Seniors and low income should have their own place. They shouldn't be used, in just a small portion of them get in these projects. Andy Friedman's been there, 40 years? And then he's just appointed to something by the governor to oversee housing. Okay. And transfer $1,021,040. Again, CARES. Federal government money that's supposed to help the right people, not the government who wastes their money. For a block grant. This money doesn't come back. We just keep going deeper and deeper in debt. Not just the city, but the state. Use money for, I won't even say what. Okay. Housing and neighborhood preservation. And homeless? Where are the homeless? They're not in that $30 million homeless shelter. Some of them are in the hotels for $500 a month, but not many. Okay. Yeah, neighborhood preservation. There are so many blighted places that zoning and permits and that department does not take care of. Okay, that's F. Okay. H. Okay, I need 1 minute to get the other one because, okay, sorry.
Ms. Messner, that's all the items they're considering at this
Good.
time.
Okay.
That
so
was
the
all
rest-
the items you went through, Ms. Messner.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wood, I think at this time we can get through the ordinance and resolutions consent.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I move for approval on the consent agenda the following items. Under ordinances and resolutions, item H1, ordinance to confirm the declaration of a local emergency for a tropical storm Isaias. Item 2, resolution to authorize the mayor, city manager, and director of finance to execute a CARES Act funding certificate on behalf of the city. 3, ordinance to authorize the use of CARES Act funding and transfer funds to various departments, hazard pay, and volunteer recognition. Item 4, ordinance to amend the City Code Section 2-85, Ray leave accrual by part-time employees. 5, ordinance to authorize temporary encroachments into a portion of city property known as 352 Tuna Lane at the rear of 2941 Wood Duck Drive, Ray relocate existing boat lift, construct and maintain a bulkhead pier and 2 personal watercraft lifts and a boat lift. Item 6, ordinance to authorize a temporary encroachment into a portion of a city-owned drainage easement at 624 Regency Drive, Ray construct and maintain a lighted double-sided monument sign. Item 7, ordinance to amend the adopted FY 2021 Capital Improvement Program project description and scope for CIP number 9-068, Dome Site Development Acquisition. Ray authorize the acquisition of property by the Virginia Beach Development Authority, noting that Mr. Moss is abstaining on this item. Item 8, ordinance to accept and appropriate $300,000 from Landmark Foundation to the FY 2021 Public Health Department operating budget and reauthorize 5 grant-funded positions, Ray Baby Care Program. Item B, $10,000 from Virginia Tourism Corporation to the FY 2021 Convention and Visitors Bureau operating budget, Ray Local Advertising and Marketing Efforts. Item C, $47,187 from the National Park Service Historic Preservation Fund and transfer $28,312 to provide local grant match to the FY 2021 Planning and Community Development operating budget, Ray survey of historical resources in the SeaTac and L&J Gardens neighborhoods. Item D, $22,500 from Virginia Department of Historic Resources and transfer $22,500 to provide local grant match to the FY 2021 Planning and Community Development operating budget, Ray preparation and publication of historic district design standards and review guidelines. Item E, $201,803 of CARES Act funding from Virginia Department of Elections to the FY 2021 voter registration and elections operating budget, Ray Health and Safety expenditures for the 2020 presidential election. Item F, $1,389,918 of CARES Act funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and transfer $1,021,040 of Community Development Block Grant funding to the FY 2021 Housing and Neighborhood Preservation operating budget, Ray eviction prevention and homeless assistance for individuals and families affected by COVID-19. Item 9, the ordinance Mr. Moss read, which was ordinance to expand Convention and Visitor Bureau Community Task Force. So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Moss is the second. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones? Councilmember Moss?
Aye, and Mr. Mayor, I'd like the opportunity to explain my abstention at the end of the vote.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, you've approved the consent agenda as read by Vice Mayor Wood, noting Mr. Moss's abstention on item number 7.
Okay, at this point, I think it's appropriate to pass the meeting on to Chair of the Planning Commission, Ms. Oliver, to talk about the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, if we could, I'd like to explain my abstention before we do that, if I could.
Okay.
Yes, just so the public would abstain, they always want to know why. I have a recent opinion from the Commonwealth Attorney dated August 18, 2020. I'd like to suspend reading it, but include it in the record as if it were read. And to summarize my letter, I have a personal interest in Dominion Resources and in a company I cannot disclose at this time due to the acquisition itself. It's in excess of dividends of $5,000 in each occasion, and there under the state statute, I have to abstain from voting on item H7 Dome Site. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Moss. Okay. Ms. Oliver.
Mayor, I'm sorry. So I believe we have items on we have one speaker signed up on numerous items for
Okay.
planning items as well. Do we want to go through those first, Mark?
My suggestion would be to call the single speaker who signed up for multiple items and allow that speaker to address both bodies before the clerk goes through the items to determine which items may be on the respective consent agendas.
Okay, thank you very much. I will abide by that decision. Okay, if we can call the speaker.
We have, Ms. Messner has signed up on multiple items as well under planning.
Okay, I'm calling an open hearing on planning.
Thank you. Ms. Messner? Ma'am, if you come to the podium. The first item is planning number 1, City of Virginia Beach for special exception for alternative compliance.
Okay. Yeah, this is approval. If you read through here, every single one is approval. Okay, regardless of how many people in the neighborhoods complain, as long as there's more developers and more special interest, everything gets approved. Okay, this is special exception for alternative compliance to the form-based code. Form-based code was created in 2012, and it costs money for people to apply for an exception. I think that's one reason that the Planning Commission makes a lot of money on these applications. Okay, recurring outdoor assembly use, open air special events. Okay, this started with Crocs. Laura Haber, the owner of Crocs Restaurant with open air, which started out as just selling produce. Now it's turned into having food trucks outside to support some of the restaurants and bars. Most of the restaurants are struggling. Abbey Road Restaurants lost 90% of their business. They've been in business 37 years. Wendy's, some of these other places, they're not even open. I objected to the taxpayer subsidies for the breweries, which stay open. I've sent y'all pictures of the breweries in the very beginning in March and April. When they were operating their open-air markets, they were not wearing masks or gloves, and neither were the people partying in the parking lot. Their parking lots are turning into extensions of businesses. That is not right. That is not what a pandemic is about. Yeah, and special events, there are no neighborhoods. There's bars, restaurants, everything, all over the place. I think Ms. Henley was the only one that voted against the bar in Oceana, and now there's the flooding over there is horrific. Ms. Wooten, you also saw the flooding over there, and y'all keep voting for all these projects, but I oppose the open air markets because it's not for selling a little bit of produce, it's for having a party and special events with loud music.
Thank you very much. If you can move on to the next item, please.
Okay. The next item Ms. Messner signed up on is Green Clean South Military LLC.
Okay. Modification of conditions. The issue is modifying conditions that you set in place. For a car wash, that's more traffic. We have too much uncontrolled growth, and I object to modifications. This is not something that needs to be heard during a pandemic. Okay, 3, and approval. The page that I didn't bring up because I fully expected more people. People told me they would come. They would be showing up on some of these items today. Yeah, y'all vote 11 to 0. And Mr. Tejan, he isn't prepared. He doesn't tell you all the problems. Mr. Jones occasionally goes out You know, to
Ms.
look at the
Messner, if we
properties.
could, not attack people
Okay.
personally.
Okay. Ex-vice mayor, how am I supposed to notify? This is my free speech. You know, if you don't want to be known for what you do, then you shouldn't be doing it. I'm sorry. Okay.
Are you finished with that item, Ms. Messner?
Okay. William Mark Convoy Construction, conditional use permit, kennel. Do you think we have enough dogs and enough animal control officers to take care of them? With this pandemic and people not being able to go for walks, should people have 8 and 9 dogs that they don't take care of? And when animal control is called, people are allowed to keep dogs when they're abusing them. So you're aware of all of this. I happen to care about my city. Okay, Harris Teeter.
Ms. Messner, I didn't have you signed up on that item.
Okay, well, I thought I signed up on all of them, but I would like to speak on that if that's all right.
Sure.
Okay, 5 and 6 have been pulled. Okay, so if you can go to 7.
Okay, but normally if something is pulled at the last minute after it's been advertised, we can still speak.
No,
Okay,
it's going to be heard.
Oh, it's going to be heard. Okay, so
Yeah.
4, 5, and 6 are going to be heard, so I'll speak at another time?
No, ma'am, only 5 and 6.
5 and 6 are pulled.
Okay.
7,
so-
8, and 9 are still viable.
And what about Harris Teeter?
Harris Teeter it's only 5 and 6 that are going to be heard at this
Okay,
point.
so I would like to speak on Harris Teeter. No one else is here. You know, I signed up, and I would like to speak on that. And, I've been shopping at Harris Teeter as long as it's been there. We have major problems with infrastructure. This is the road on Baltic before it turns into Holly. And then you have another project, Murden and Cheney Cole, who's been on the rack since the 90s. You're building another project over here. There's flooding. This is the wetlands. 1997, it was the Alaskan Road project. You've had these plans all along. The road is literally falling apart. And this is the sidewalk. You can't even walk on the sidewalk. And yet you're going to, where you're planning to build, I think it's Brenneman Farms. This is where the ducks have been hanging out, and it's flooding. You put no parking signs there, even though it's floodwaters. And you plan to build more condos there. I object. Okay, and you want me to go to 7?
Yes.
Okay. Another conditional use permit, short-term rental. We have too many short-term rentals. Ms. Henley stated all the reasons. I think there's 20 ordinances, and you didn't even fund all this money that you're funding, but you didn't fund for additional people to inspect these, for health and public safety. We should not be, short-term rentals is not a COVID-related item. And until you fix the infrastructure problems and the budget problems and the reasonable access to city government, I oppose all short-term rentals. There's too many, you're destroying the quality of the neighborhoods. And I believe it's 2 per week. So that's total strangers, and you have no idea where they're coming from. There's been no restrictions. I think Airbnb is trying to do a little bit on their own. Okay. Ms. Barnes, do you want me to go to the rest of them? Pardon?
Yes?
Okay.
Okay. 8, 3D Builder Investment Llc. A lot of these companies are just signing up for this. It's like the gold rush. You know, get an Airbnb, buy houses, people are losing their homes, buy the house, turn it into Airbnb. These are not, most of them do not live there, and they're hiring people, including Atkinson Realty, to manage the property. And, yeah. And I brought this up before. This is a property, and these signs. This is important for Ms. Oliver and Mr. Tahan. Okay, this is the one at 629 Surfside Drive. And they were hiding the sign back behind the trees, and they've been renting it without a conditional use permit. And now they put the sign up front, but you put these paper things in a sleeve, and you covered up what's on the bottom of the sign. And the one for Prime Storage, where Birdneck Storage was, that, I've sent you pictures of that too. The yellow sign you couldn't read. And now it's torn down, so there's no sign there. So, okay. That's Beach District.
Shield number 8.
Mr. Tower is my several people's, he's for the entire Beach District, and Mr. Alcaraz, you know, is the representative for the beach. I think y'all should not be approving these. And Mr. Alcaraz does respond to residents, but Mr. Tower, since he's taken office, has never responded to one piece of one official email. So I oppose because of destroying the ability for anyone to buy houses in these neighborhoods. Okay, 9, Lovering conditional use permit, short-term rental approval recommendation, Baltic Avenue Beach District. The flooding there is terrible. I've mentioned it before because I've spoken at planning, but I don't go anymore because it was 4.5 hours for one meeting. Flooding is terrible there. It's been bad since 1980. It's only getting worse. Okay. And do you want me to...
Item number 10 was withdrawn by the applicant.
I'm aware.
Okay.
But since it was on the agenda, we're able to speak.
No.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Stiles?
Mr. Mayor, this is not like the typical agenda item that would come before you after coming to the Planning Commission. There's no action that either the council or the Planning Commission can take on this item because it was withdrawn by the applicant prior to the commencement of the public hearing. So there is no action to be taken, and it is the will of the body whether to allow the speaker to speak, but this is not the typical circumstance where you do so.
Okay, yeah, the item has been pulled,
Okay, but
it's been pulled.
I've seen the notice from the people who are objecting, and what Venture Realty plans to do is work with them. It's deferred. It's not permanently canceled, to my knowledge, and I haven't seen anything that it's permanently withdrawn. And there
As
are
of
plenty...
this point, the applicant has withdrawn. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at this point, Ms. Oliver?
Go ahead, Mark.
Mr. Mayor and,
Yes.
and Chair Oliver, at this point, I would suggest that there are no other speakers, I believe, other than applicants. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So the inquiry of both bodies at this point would be whether any member of either body wishes to pull any of the other items other than 5 or 6 off of their respective consent agendas. And if not, then Ms. Oliver would be, it would then be the Planning Commission's opportunity to present and consider their consent agenda, followed by the council.
Okay. Outside of item 5 and 6, are there any other items to be pulled? I don't see that. Okay, Ms. Oliver? Your consent discussion?
Thank you, Mayor. All right, we're going to go ahead and start with our consent agenda. And I am going to hand that over to, well, you know what, I'm going to ask the city clerk, do we have any speakers for any of the items?
We have no other speaker other than for for 5 and 6.
Other than for 5 and 6?
Yes, so those are the only 2 items.
Okay.
So everything else on the agenda could be approved by consent.
Okay,
If
thank you.
If that's your will.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our vice chair, Commissioner Weiner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move for approval items 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, and 9.
Thank you. Do I have a motion, please?
That's a motion. That is a motion.
Oh, do I have a second, please?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Horsley.
Second.
All right, we call for the,
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a declaration on item number 3. I do farm some of the property that's on the site where the dog kennel is, but based on the conversation I've had with Ms. Wilson, there's no financial advantage there. So
great, thank you. Anybody else need to abstain? All right, on that, we have a motion on the floor and a second, so I will call for the question, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Alvarez? Commissioner Barnes is absent. Commissioner Costin?
Yes.
Commissioner Graham's absent. Commissioner Horsley?
yes.
Commissioner Inman's absent. Commissioner Klein?
Yes.
Commissioner Redmond's absent. Commissioner Wall?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weiner?
Yes.
Chair Oliver?
Yes.
By a vote of 7-0, you approve the consent agenda for the Planning Commission, noting Commissioner Horsley's disclosure.
I thank the members of the Planning Commission, and at this point, I turn over to Mr. Wood for the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move for approval under the consent agenda, planning item I-1, City of Virginia Beach for a special exception ray alternative compliance to the form-based code, ray recurring outdoor assembly use and open-air market special events for properties located south of Interstate 264, west of Parks Avenue and slightly east of Parks Avenue, north of 18th Street, west of Washington Avenue, north of 17th Street, and east of North Bird Neck Road in the Beach District. Item 2, Green Clean South Military LLC for a modification of conditions, Ray Car Wash Facility, 820 South Military Highway, District 3, Kempsville. Item 3, William Mark Conboy Construction for conditional use permit, Ray Commercial Kennel for 3285 Indian Creek Road, the Princess Anne District. Item 4, Harris Teeter Properties, Inc., Brenneman Farm Retail Associates, LLC, for conditional use permit, Ray Automobile Service Station at 4540 Princess Anne Road in the Kempsville District. Item 7, can I just clarify on items 7, 8, and 9? Mr. Moss, Ms. Henley, and Mr. Jones, are you going to be voting nay on these items? Are you going to be voting nay on the 3 short-term rental items? Mr. Jones? Okay. So item 7, Casey Krumke for conditional use permit, Ray short-term rental at 133 Ackus Avenue in the Beach District, noting Mr. Moss, Ms. Henley, and Mr. Jones voting nay. Item 8, 3D Builder Investments LLC for conditional use permit, Ray short-term rental at 421 21st Street in the Beach District, noting Mr. Moss, Ms. Henley, and Mr. Jones voting nay. Item 9, John and Kristen Lovering for a conditional use permit, Ray short-term rental at 1718 Baltic Avenue in the Beach District, noting that Mr. Moss, Ms. Henley, and Mr. Jones voting nay. So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, could I have a second?
1 second.
Could I make an inquiry about the nay votes to make sure that Mr. Jones, Mr. Moss, and Ms. Henley are aware that these folks, I think, I have not kept an actual scoreboard, have agreed to the same conditions that were imposed in the last time we did STRs, i.e. a reduction of number of people from 3 to 2 and number of people per bedroom from 3 to 2 and 1 rental per week versus 2 per week. I just want to make sure.
For clarification,
Yeah, and-
Mr. Tower just wants to explain that the applicants have received, agreed to the same considerations about 1 rental per week and
2 per bedroom
and
versus
2 per
3
bedroom, as previous.
What about the children?
In your line of inquiry, when that came before the planning commission, those were, the very first time, I don't believe those were the conditions that were before the planning commission. So were they amended and given to the planning commission again with the new conditions on it? Or is that just something that we are seeing and we are making amendments? I'm just trying to understand.
My understanding is that they've advised the planning staff that they are agreeable to the conditions. I don't think that it's been back to planning.
Well, since this is a joint meeting, I'm trying to understand when the planning commission acted and just voted, what were the conditions that were before them that they voted on versus the conditions that we have? I don't believe those were the conditions before the planning commission originally during the misadvertisement. I'm just trying to clarify that that's the case, and maybe Mr. Tahan, the city attorney, can so advise.
Mr. Moss, you're correct. When the Planning Commission first heard those items, they did not have those conditions because those changes to the short-term rental conditions came up after the public hearings, original public hearings for these. The applicants have subsequently, in preparation for this meeting, agreed to the conditions to change their conditions to 2 people per bedroom and 1 rental per week per confirmation that we have.
Well, my question remains, so when the planning commission voted, what was the reference document that they are referencing when they cast their vote?
They would have referenced their original, and yes, their original document they had.
My point stands as to why I'm voting no. Obviously, it's a position that the planning commission could reconsider and correct here tonight, but that is the reason for my no vote, because we are acting on the planning. I think the motion was on the planning commission. Now, I'm open to a substitute motion, which Mr. Dyer could clearly make, imposing those conditions and having the applicant say they agree, but I just want to make sure what we're voting on. I would vote aye from Mr. Tower's position. I would vote nay on what the planning commission voted for.
Okay. Mr. Stiles, it's
My suggestion, or my belief, and perhaps this should have been called out prior to the Planning Commission's consideration of their consent agenda, and it didn't occur to me until the issue was arisen. As printed in the agenda, there is strikeout through 3 and insert 2 for the number per bedroom, and there is strikeout for 2 contracts per week and inserted 1 for those items. So I guess the inquiry back to the Planning Commission is, when you voted, did you have an appreciation of that, and does that require you to reconsider the earlier consent agenda vote? Because I believe that is what is in the printed agenda that is before both bodies today. So that I apologize for not calling that change out. That is different than what was presented to the Planning Commission before, I believe. Correct, Mr. Tom?
That is correct, Mr. Stiles. Madam Chair, the conditions that were agreed upon by the applicant, each of the applicants for the short-term rentals, are the ones similar to what you've heard in your August Planning Commission hearing, where they've altered their number of rentals to 1 per week, as well as 2 people per bedroom for the calculation for occupancy. So, Mr. Weiner.
On the agenda, it does have 3 per bedroom.
It does on the agenda that was distributed, because because we provided you your minutes from the previous meeting, we wanted to give you the original information. But the applicants have agreed, and I do apologize for not bringing that up, but the applicants have agreed to the change as similar to what we've imposed on other applicants.
Mr. Mayor, I just recommend that Mr. Tower make an amended motion. It's easiest to clarify it because we're the final say, and he just has to make an amendment, and I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Thank you,
Tower?
Thank you, Mr. Morales. I think your comments are right on about kind of straighten this out. And I would make that substitute motion that that these be approved with the changes in the number of people per bedroom from 3 to 2 and the number of rentals per week from 2 to 1. If I could, I'd like to, before I stop talking here, also say that I have another change that I would like to make on a universal basis that I've discussed with some of the folks in the room, and that is in terms of how we count the people for this purpose, and that is to exclude any children under the age of 16 from the count, so that children are not counted for this purpose, and make that generally applicable. I'm not quite sure how to
I believe
do that.
Mr. Mayor, I
Mr.
believe if you're
Stiles, is
making
this the
those
time for
changes,
that?
you need to pull those items from the consent agenda and consider them individually, which I
Yeah.
believe, in fairness to the Planning Commission, you should allow them to also take up those items as well before you do it again.
That's perfectly okay with me.
Okay, so we're going to pull those items? Okay,
I
Mr.
think
Wood?
it's just items, I think it's the short-term rental items. I mean, I don't know, Mr. Tower can make the motion that he just added for council only, but Planning Commission may wish to give you a different recommendation now that they understand that you're talking about a difference in the number of persons per bedroom and number of contracts per week. I don't know whether they do or not, but, and again, I'm sorry for the confusion, but we are sort of feeling our way through this for the first time. I'm sure it'll be better next week, but I think in fairness, if the Planning Commission does want to go back and remove those from their consent agenda and reconsider them, in fairness, you would then allow them to do that.
Okay. Any comment from Planning Commission?
Yes, why don't we just go ahead and do another vote with the amended amended conditions for 2 per bedroom and 1 rental per week.
And excluding children in the count.
And excluding children under the
Age of 16 in the count.
under 16 or 15? 16 and under? 15 and under. So we
I
would,
believe you're just pulling the short-term rentals from your consent agendas and you're hearing them and allowing, because I think you need to let the applicants speak to those, because that's an entirely new condition.
so, okay, understood. So we would, so we would start with I don't even know where my items are.
So
okay,
you
so
would now,
we-
your consent agenda would now only apply, you would need a motion, you would rescind your prior approval of the consent agenda by agreement, and your consent agenda would now consist only of items council's already voted on that consent agenda.
Okay.
So it would,
Mr. Wood?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, so I modify my consent agenda motion to be items I-1 through 4. So
Okay.
moved.
Okay, so the motion is to vote on consent on the planning items, on items 1 through 4. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Abbott Councilmember Abbott did you make the second? Thank you. Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
I really have to clarify because I just don't hear this far down when I'm not looking at someone. You amended the motion, so we're only voting on the first 4 items?
First 4 items only.
That's correct.
Okay, aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11 to 0, you have approved the consent agenda items 1 through 4, planning.
Okay, at this point, we'll go ahead and move forward with hearing item number 5, which is Michael James Fitzgibbon, conditional use permit, raise short-term rental at 222 East Berry Circle, District 4, Bayside.
The first speaker, Whitney Landon.
And this will be on the conditions as presented in the agenda, which is with 2 persons per bedroom and 1 contract per week.
Whitney Landon.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Mr. Stiles?
The Planning Commission is considering the item as it is presented to them in the agenda, and as presented in the agenda, the language in the condition says 2 persons per bedroom and 1 contract per 7-day period. Now, Mr. Towers indicated that he intends to make an additional motion when it gets to the council to deal with the age limit for people who count. That's not part of what is, well, I just don't know that we can add that, Mr. Tower, to be honest with you, because that has not been previously brought before the Planning Commission, so I think that can be brought in the future, but I just don't know. That's an entirely new issue that has not been brought before the Planning Commission with proper notice. Well, you require a recommendation from your Planning Commission, and your Planning Commission hasn't previously taken it up, and I think that's a material distinction. So I believe that has to go back. That condition would need to go back to them.
Well, Mr. Stiles, when I first made the motion in the previous meeting to amend the approval of ones that were on the docket that day for 2 and 1, there was no suggestion that that had to be referred back to planning before it became effective, was it?
Well, I guess it's a question, Mr. Tower, of whether or not the number was previously considered by both bodies. I guess how you determine how to count that number, I guess you could conclude that that is presumed within that, but that is certainly not something that the Planning Commission has taken up previously, whereas they have taken up the 3 versus 2 and made a recommendation to you on that.
Okay, Ms. Wilson.
Mr. Stiles, of course, we've been talking about this for 5 years, and there was a time when we talked about not counting the children and allowing them to, sort of like when children eat free in the restaurant, it's not to include them in the count. So we actually have discussed it over the 5-year period that we've been talking about these.
Okay, Ms. Oliver, I think you have somebody.
Mr. Stiles, I have a question. In our write-up now, can we do it?
Yeah.
In our write-up now, it says that it still says 2 per 7 days and 3 people. So we have to make sure that the applicant is agreeable to two people and 1 night, 1 per 7 day.
So you don't have the printed council agenda item, you
No.
only have the information that you had before?
That's the point I've been
The
making.
same, yes, we have the same conditions we had before, not newer ones.
Vice Chair Wiener, the applicants have agreed to the change to, just so that you're aware, the applicants have agreed to the change to the calculation of 2 per bedroom and 1 rental per week. So that was subsequent to your previous meeting, but we do have that in writing from the applicants that they agreed to those amendments.
So when we vote on that, we just have to make sure that we say that, amend it, because it's not in here.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
May I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Jones.
I just want to be clear what Mr. Stiles is saying. I'm interpreting what he's saying is that we can't act upon the issue of the age of the children at this meeting. Is that correct?
I have a concern that because that issue has not been raised with the Planning Commission since you adopted your ordinance a year and a half ago, that item should go back to them for their recommendation. But I take Mr. Tower and Ms. Wilson's point that the number of 3 versus 2 has been an issue that council has acted differently on. So I guess it's the will of the body by vote. But the Planning Commission, I don't believe, has heard since 2018 of the issue of not counting people under the age of 16 before tonight. I may be wrong about that, but I think that is the case.
It just seems to me it's up to Mr. Tower to make a motion as to whether or not he wants to approve these applications with the restriction of 2 per bedroom and 1 rental per week.
No question about that, Mr.
Then we can deal with the issue of the age of children in a subsequent meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Stiles, or am I incorrect?
That would have been my suggestion.
Yep, Ms. Wilson.
So would we go back and let these applicants have the children be included without counting them, or will they stand on that 2 per bedroom?
If you go back and amend the ordinance to make it more to allow the count to go up by allowing children, then I think you can do that. What you couldn't do is approve it with a higher number and then reduce it after they've already begun to operate pursuant to the approval. So yes, you could go back and amend the ordinance generally to say, but the count of 2 per bedroom does not include the count of people 15 and under. So you could go back and do that and make that applicable in the calculation at a future date, and that would apply to all of the rentals if you made it a general requirement.
So if I could just speak for a moment to the merits of this. If you are a family of 5, 2 adults and 3 children, you'd have to rent a 3-bedroom house. I don't really know how many people would want to do that. They'd probably want a 2-bedroom house with 3 kids with bunk beds and the adults in the other 2. I think if we want to consider ourselves a family-friendly beach, we want people to bring their children, and we don't want to make it so restrictive for them. I have a little cottage. I don't rent it out, but it's a good example. It has 3 bedrooms, and I have 2 adult daughters who are married, and they each have 2 kids. So when they come, each of the 2 parents get a bedroom, and they put all 4 of the children in the 3rd bedroom, and that would equal 8, which if only 2 per bedroom, we would only be allowed to have 6 people there. So I think another good thing is the children don't drive. That's why when Mr. Town and I talked about it, would be 15 and under, so it would not create another problem with another vehicle. So we want to be a family-friendly beach. We heard the RAC presentation today, and that's where they're headed. And I think we want to make this more inviting for families. And I think that's a really good point for not counting the children. I think the 2 per bedroom is fine if we would be a little easier on the children. So I think, just want you to consider that. Thank you.
Okay, if I can make a recommendation at this point, I concur that, we should have special considerations for children, but being how this just kind of came up today, and Mr. Stiles, would it be fair to say if we went ahead and amended, the two-person thing, that would apply, to previous applications?
If the Planning Commission is willing to take up this issue in connection with these applications tonight and approve it with the condition of 2 per bedroom, but not counting people under 15 and age and under, I think that the council could proceed and do that with these applications tonight, and then you could deal with this as a broader ordinance moving forward. And that way you wouldn't have to go back and revisit those, but otherwise, then yes, I would say you need to refer to the Planning Commission an ordinance that, and I think you should do this anyway, an ordinance that says we want to change the 3 to 2, but we don't want to count children under the age of 15, if that's the will of the council.
Okay, Mr. Tower.
Mr. Stiles, is it possible, I'm perfectly happy to delay this children vote. I know it's coming up just today. I'm not trying to run it through today, but I'd like to know if it's possible to do it on a universal basis so that it would apply to all, just an interpretation of what we mean by people for this purpose.
I think you can do that.
Okay, well then I'm not concerned really about trying to impose it on these applications tonight. I would like to get since the applicants have all already agreed to the 2 in 1 week, 2 per bedroom and 1 week rentals, I'd like to keep that going. And that's in the material that we all have, correct? They have the same.
I think we can do that, Mr. Tower, but once again, I think, even a discussion about, the children, the age, and, the thing, if we can do it retrospectively, I think that would be the best path to, take tonight. Okay? So, okay. All right.
I was in the process of making a motion when we started this discussion, and so I'd like to go back to that if it's still in order. I'd like to move the approval of these and I'm not sure whether I need to do this because it's in the material that we were shown, but I just want to, for purposes of making sure that it's being covered, I'd move the approval with the understanding that the applications are all subject to a limit of 2 persons per bedroom and 1 rental per 7-day period.
And so that is to applications 7, 8, and 9?
7 and 8 and 9.
7, 8, and 9 are the ones that I was looking at, yeah.
So the Planning Commission's prior vote on those will stand as recommended, the way it was presented to them, and your motion is to differ from that recommendation by changing those numbers. Is that, just for purposes of the clerk's record?
For record purposes, I'm fine with that. If that is offensive to anyone in terms of not giving the Planning Commission opportunity to clearly vote on what they want, I'm happy to have them revote too.
Yeah, with that being said, would it be possible, be feasible to put it back on a consent basis, or do we have to hear them now? That
I don't see any. Ms. Oliver, does the Planning Commission wish to reconsider 7, 8, and 9 in light of the discussion?
The only question I have is to Mr. DeHaan, is that the applicants are aware of that change when they came to us. Am I correct of that?
Ms. Oliver, the change in condition came after they had initially come to for your initial public hearing with this. We had subsequently contacted each of the applicants to see if they would be agreeable to the change in condition that council imposed on the most recent short-term rentals, which is the conditions we're discussing right now.
Okay, thank you. So the only thing I have is to ask the commissioners here, are they good with that? Or do you want to re-vote on that with those new conditions on it?
Good.
Or let council go ahead and take it? Okay, it's all yours.
okay, Mr. Wood.
Mr. Mayor, move on the consent agenda, item 7, Casey Krumke for conditional use permit, rate short-term rental, 133 Ackus Avenue, Beach District. Item 8, 3D Builder Investments Llc, rate short-term rental at 421 21st Street in the Beach District. Item 9, John and Kristen Lovering, conditional use permit, short-term rental at 1718 Baltic Avenue, Beach District, all three with the conditions that Mr. Tower mentioned. So moved.
Second.
May I ask? I couldn't understand a word you said. 7, 8, and 9, though, did you reflect that I'm still voting no?
No, you have an opportunity to vote no because it's only these three items. So you can vote no if you like.
Because these two amendments make a nice step forward, but we still don't have enforcement in place, and until we've addressed those things, I still cannot support it, so I will vote no.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Yes, and Councilmember Moss, did you make the second?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Thank you, just wanted to confirm. Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
No.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten? Is Ms. Wooten up there? I can't see. Has she stepped out?
Yes,
Thank
she's not
you.
here.
I'm sorry, I didn't see. Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 9 to 1, with Ms. Wooten being absent. You've approved
Okay,
these items.
thank you all. Healthy discussion. Okay, we'll now move to item number 5, Michael James Fitzgibbon, Ray conditional use permit, short-term rental, 222 East Berry Circle, District 4, Bayside.
Begin with the Planning Commission's deliberation after the public hearing.
Trying to get my bearings here. Okay. Number 5, Whitney Landon had registered via WebEx, but we do not see a Whitney Landon. Is there Whitney Landon in attendance? Okay. Janet Marino. Is there a Janet Marino in attendance? Okay. The only other speaker then is Barbara Messner. Oh, I'm sorry. Ma'am, what's your name? Come on up to the podium. I'm sorry. No, ma'am. You're after Miss Messner.
Okay. I just want to make sure you knew that.
I have you, yes. Miss Messner? Jesus Christ. It's too much.
Okay, this is 5 that was
Yes.
pulled?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. First, I would like to strongly object to Mr. Tower taking over the meeting. We have a city attorney, and you're overriding him. You have a conflict. We pay the firm that you have stock and shares with, Kaufman and Knowles, and you live in the Beach District, and you're pushing through all these. You've already voted, and then you changed the vote. And
With due respect,
okay,
Ms. Messner.
with due respect, I would like to finish. I've been here a long time. I frankly give a damn. Mr. Tejan does not represent, he should not represent the developers and come up here and speak for them. Okay, I object. I object to the conflicts. I object to, you're changing the rules. This says conditional use permit. It doesn't say application to amend the code. And you're amending the code and you're changing things after the fact. 15-year-olds can drive. If you want to talk about children, Ms. Wilson, most of the event houses at Sandbridge, where you and your family stay, they're not small little cottages. We welcome, children. But it should be maybe 10-year-old and under, not 15 and under. half the problems, with behavior are kids, and they have nothing to do right now. They're not even in school. So it's not our duty to provide additional housing for these people. Short-term rental takes away from the neighborhoods. I strongly object to these, and I strongly object to Mr. Towers, trying to change the rules after the fact, after you voted, and all these substitute motions. Most of these have been in the Beach District. There's plenty coming up again on the 25th and September 1st. Like I said, I don't appreciate Mr. Tower pushing the issue and trying to change things after the fact. And these things have been going on for a long time. And Ms. Henley is fully aware. Who is going to decide how old the children are? Who's going to go in there and count them? Half the people who are doing these short-term rentals are investors. They admit they're investors. And we have COVID off and on. So, we should not be changing it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The next speaker is Sarah Hauck.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Sarah Hauck. My address is 5032 Lauderdale Avenue, Virginia Beach. I live in Chesapeake Beach. I am speaking for the Chesapeake Beach Civic League Short-Term Rental Committee. We oppose Mr. Fitzgibbon's request for STR. Berry Circle is a very nice little street with new single-family homes, duplexes, and a few condos. There are no STRs in this area of Chesapeake Beach. We feel having a STR here would be detrimental to this quiet neighborhood. I do want to say that I would not like to have an unlimited amount of children next to me if I had an STR next to me. I think you need to limit like age 5 or something. I think that's going to be a disaster. So anyway, any questions?
Thank you.
Mayor, that's all the speakers.
Okay, we defer to planning. Oh, they have to decide. Yeah. Yeah, we'll let them have first, and then you will have the floor.
Mr. Stiles, is there an applicant for this here, present?
Chair Oliver, the applicant had registered via WebEx and in person. There was one additional person that had registered in person, Janet Marino, and then it says the manager of the property is Whitney Landon, who had registered via WebEx. However, we do not have a Whitney Landon online via WebEx. We only have actually 2 individuals participating WebEx.
Is there anyone here purporting to represent the applicant in this application?
They are not in attendance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and close it and open it up to the commissioners for discussion and/or a motion. Yes, Mr. Weiner.
Mrs. Oliver, I know we've heard this before, and looking at the application, I know one of our big things is parking, and there's plenty of parking here. And we look at, so I move for approval of this application with item 13 as being 1 rental per 7 days, and item 16 being max of 2 people per bedroom.
Do I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call for the question.
Thank you. Commissioner Alvarez? Commissioner Barton is absent. Commissioner Costin? Commissioner Graham is absent. Commissioner Horsley?
Yes.
Commissioner Inman is absent. Commissioner Klein?
Yes.
Commissioner Redmond is absent. Commissioner Wall?
Yes.
Vice Chair Wiener?
Yes.
Chair Oliver?
Yes.
By a vote of 7-0, you have approved the application as amended.
Madam Chair, I do want to note for the record also that the reference to the number of occupants is also in condition 5, which is a part of, I tried to jump up to say it, but I believe your reference to condition number 16 covers that generally, stating the number of occupants in total, but that is a reference number in there, so I believe you meant to include that as well. Is that correct, Mr. Weiner? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I thank the Planning Commission. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I went out and looked at this property. It's on a very narrow street. It's basically a condo.
We're having trouble. Yeah, a little closer to the mic, Lewis.
It's basically a condo of 2. It's in a neighborhood where it's a significant distance, both from the beach, and there really is nothing characteristic in my mind about this application that justifies turning it into a short-term rental in a residential community. I therefore move to deny the application.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I would second Mr. Jones's motion.
Okay. Any discussion by council? Okay, Madam Clerk?
And the motion is to deny.
The motion is to deny.
Yes. Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilmember Berlucci? Aye. Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, this application has been denied.
Okay, and moving on to number 6, the final, Timothy Hanlon, Ray, conditional use permit, short-term rental at 2541 Seaview Avenue, District 4, Bayside.
The first speaker is the applicant, Timothy Hanlon.
Welcome.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Planning Commission. I appreciate your time tonight. I'll keep it brief. I'm mainly applying for this rental. This is my primary residence. I do live in it right now, and I'm deploying in October, so my intent is to rent it out while I deploy, and I'll be returning in April. I deploy roughly every 2 years for our cycle, so that's, when I'm home, I intend on living in it. I have no issues with the new rules. I think that actually promotes more to man what you said about the family component of it. So no issues with that. I've done the courtesy of reaching out to all my neighbors. All 5 of them have endorsed my application. They understand, I'm going to be respectful, and when I'm gone, I have a property manager who's going to make sure it's in good condition and that I'm respectful to my neighbors, because I understand a lot of them are, enjoying the community, enjoy the beach, and I don't want tenants to come in and potentially, obviously detract from that. So I am cognizant of that. I realize that is why a lot of these get objections, and my property will not be one of those properties where wild parties are happening, and it's in my interest too, because it's my own residence that I would like to return to. In regards to the previous tenants, since I won't have a chance to rebuttal, I don't know Mr. Fitzgibbon, but all I would ask is there a distinction between his application that was just struck down versus the other ones in the beach district? I know it's a different district, but same concept, that just got a 10-1 vote. He wasn't obviously here to represent himself, but I certainly hope mine doesn't fall into that same category. I do live on the beach, built a brand new wraparound deck that I'm hoping other families can enjoy when I'm out of the country, serving my country. Pending your questions, sir, I'll stand by, but I appreciate the consideration.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I have a couple of questions, if I may. Did you, sir,
Yes,
over here,
got it.
all right. Did you say you're the owner, you are the owner of the property?
Yes, sir.
And do you live there now?
Yes, I do.
All right, and what are you going to do? Are you going to vacate it for the purpose of renting it, or what are you doing?
Sir, when I deploy, my intent would be to rent it while I'm gone, so it would just remain furnished. Obviously, I would remove some of my, personal belongings that are, near and dear to me, but yes, the idea would be to rent it while I'm deployed, and then when I return in April, God willing, then I would live in it again for another year and a half.
When do you return?
Should be around April, sir, if everything...
April of next year?
Yeah, so it's about a 6.5 month deployment, typically.
And who do you have handling it while you're gone?
Her name is Sierra Alderman. She's actually here as well, and has done a really good job. Have total faith in her ability. I also have regular communications with my neighbors. They're good friends of mine, and before all this, I went around as a courtesy to tell them what I intended to do, because I realized a lot of people, when it's their primary residence, the last thing they want is people next door causing a ruckus. So I'm very cognizant of that, and I have received endorsement from 5 of them that were encouraging to what I was doing, and were appreciative that I actually took the time to reach out. So they know they can reach out to me at any time if there's any issues as well, sir.
Did I noticed in the write-up that there's a number of other units in that small complex that you're in that are already short-term rentals. Are any of those yours?
Negative, sir. That is correct. I believe people got grandfathered in. There is one right behind me, and I do know that gentleman. He's actually also in the military, and there's been no issues with his tenants. Everyone's been respectful, and it's been totally fine. But I believe everyone else, it's their primary residence in the surrounding area, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Rouse.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe I spoke on this applicant last time I was in support of this, of your short-term rental. You were on the phone, I believe, last time. You wasn't here in person.
Yeah, I was out in San Diego for some training. I had to do the digital thing. That's correct, sir.
All right. I just want to say thank you also for your service and your commitment to our country. I believe the reason why I supported this applicant as well, because this was his primary residence. Also, our military men and women they should be paid a lot more than what they make also. But if this is a way for him to really subsidize his primary place while he's not in town, while he's doing our country a service, I would hope that we would support our men and women and support this applicant in this STR. So again, thank you for your service as well.
I appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I just got a question. I just want to make sure before we get confused. I thought the planning was supposed to hear it first and then go to you. I'm just making sure.
Yeah, we're all
I'm
listening
sorry.
to the speakers. And
I'm learning too.
Once we, George, once we get to a decision point, then I defer over to D, and then we get it. Okay. Any questions from the applicant? For the applicant. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
The next speaker is Sierra Alderman, and after Ms. Alderman will be Barbara Messner.
Welcome.
Hi.
Got my salad.
Hello. Pull this up. Okay. Good evening, Council. My name is Sierra Alderman. I'm representing Timothy Hanlon this evening for 2541 Seaview Avenue. I'm proud to be able to take care of his place while he's on military trips and deployments. I only have a few houses that I take care of, and that's intentional. I prefer knowing each house inside and out and knowing all of the neighbors personally. All of Timothy's neighbors know and have seen me personally. They all have my number in case of any issues and have even signed a document stating their approval. It's very important to me to have a strict vetting process and take care of my neighbors first, or his neighbors first and foremost. I live 10 minutes down the street. I can respond to anything that may occur. I'm proud to offer his place in Chicks Beach. It would otherwise be empty while he's on military trainings. This is a benefit for our city, as we spoke about, to be able to offer to our military members some sort of income for their furnished homes that would otherwise stay empty. Guests get to enjoy our beautiful city, and military members get to make a little additional income, and the city gets a little extra in tax income. His home is on the water, and we should be proud to show off our beautiful beaches. I recommend the council to vote yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Oh, Dee?
I have one question. So since it's in the winter, do you typically get a lot of one-week rentals, or is it more monthly?
It's much slower, so it's usually at least weekly, sometimes monthly. Usually seeing 50% or less occupancy, so it is going to be slower and usually longer stays.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Next speaker is Barbara Messner, and after Ms. Messner is Sarah Hauck.
I believe the applicant spoke electronically the last time, and he accused me of just speaking out that I was one of the people at planning, which I wasn't. I care about my city, and I have a right to speak out against the explosion, the gold rush, of everybody wanting a short-term rental. You charge a lot of money, you compete against the hotels. We have, I think, 7,000 hotel rooms. Yeah, and you're obviously charging a lot of money if you can hire somebody to take care of it. I was military dependent. We didn't rent our house out. We respected the neighbors wherever we lived. And usually you have a relative or somebody, if you live in the area and you care about the area, you know somebody to watch your house when you're gone. You don't just use it as a money-making scheme. And as Ms. Henley has articulated, I don't know how many times, but it falls on deaf ears or developer ears, we don't have enforcement. You're counting on the people who want to make money, and it's an investment property, to do this. And when they say that the neighbors agree, I didn't see any letters or documents, from neighbors, and I think there were people, who were objecting before. For everyone, I've said this before, for everyone who is agreeing and chomping at the bit and trying to rush through all these, part of the reason is you want the income, the taxes, because you haven't managed your money properly. But you're destroying the neighborhood while you're doing it. And as long as we have a pandemic, who is going to guarantee that no one coming in has COVID or commits a crime, to the neighbors? There's neighbors who've had hostile people renting, and I oppose them. Ms. Oliver, a lot of people gave really good comments when you held the meeting before. Mr. Grockmile and Dr. Mottola, that there should be a limit to how many. If you want to make an amendment to limit the number on a street and to ensure that somebody is, on the premises. Hotels are required to have security on the premises. Short-term rentals should have somebody on the premises. I object to these. Thank you.
Sarah Hauck is the next speaker.
Hi again. I'm speaking for the Short-Term Rental Committee from Chesapeake Beach Civic League. When this was up before Planning Commission, there was an issue with parking, and there was something about an easement, and thought I saw in your notes that the city's going to give them an easement so they can get the extra car on there. We don't feel like that's a good precedent to set. If I'm wrong in that, please let me know, but I don't think that's really what should be done when in a small area like that with all those houses squeezed in. I just don't think that's a really good idea to set as a precedent to let people use an easement for their parking.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers. The applicant, Mr. Handelin, would you like to come up for rebuttal?
Thank you. Yes, that was originally brought up. The gentleman who took my application initially, Kevin Hirschberger, and I discussed that. I believe I sent him a few pictures with some drawings and illustrations showing. The bottom line is, due to my nature of my application, it required 4 parking spots. You could easily fit 4 cars in my driveway. The property line extends into a gravel driveway that you can see on the pictures. And if you're parking SUVs in my car or in my driveway, which I did because that's worst case scenario, the bumper hangs over by about 1.5 feet. However, if you can see the picture, it's a little hard to see in that turquoise area. That's about I can't see the distance. It's about a 20-foot buffer. So while yes, in a technicality, a bumper would hang over that line, there's a gravel lot that is plenty of room. I've talked to some of the local police that regularly patrol in that area, and they said, you know, all they're worried about is making sure they can get to and from the beach, and that's the main concern. Like I said, there's quite a big buffer if the parking lot were full with 4 large vehicles. With regular sized cars, you don't even get near that property line. But when I measured it, I did it because I wanted to make sure worst case scenario, if the families that come all get SUVs, that's where we're at. So I do understand the consideration, but I can assure you that there's no issues with public egress to and from the beach or any emergency vehicles, which I know the law enforcement, that would be their main concern. So pending your questions, that's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Mr. Hahn, do or do we not have 4 dimensions of parking spaces, and is or is not, if licensed vehicles occupy that space and they're the maximum allowable size by passing state law, can they park without encroaching on the public easement? Because we've been pretty tough on easements, and I'm just trying to understand what he said. Sounded like if 4 Suburbans parked there, they couldn't stay within the parking dimensions required by the ordinance. Is that correct or not?
Thank you, Mr. Moss. So the parking plan that you have in front of you here, there is space to meet the 9x18 requirement. However, as you know, there's some of the vehicles that he referenced can be larger than the 18 feet in depth. You can see space 2 is located inside the garage, with space 1 being located adjacent to where their stairwell is to their second floor deck. And then space 3, per this, there's enough distance between the shielded mechanical units in the front and the property line, because the property line does do an angle to fit the 18-foot on the property just barely.
Okay, good, because we have 4 qualifying legal spots. I just don't want someone to walk away from here thinking that if a vehicle was parked and exceeded that parking space and was in the public easement, they could be ticketed.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay, Ms. Oliver?
Thank you, Mayor. All right, we're going to close our hearing to the floor and open it up for discussion amongst the commissioners or a motion. Yes.
I think this is where Airbnb got its start, and I think this is a great application. I would like to make a motion to approve the application.
Wonderful. Do I have a second?
I need to amend it real quick. Okay. Approval with the amendment of item 12, condition 12 to be one rental per 7 days, and condition 15 and 4, which will make maximum 2 per bedroom. Good?
So good? Do you have a second, please? No, he didn't second.
I've got a comment, though, before we...
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I support it. I think it's a good application. The only thing is, this may not always be his primary residence. So just to keep that in mind, that, it's a great application, in my opinion, but it's something just to be cognizant of that, it may not always be his primary residence. So after approval, it could be secondary as a, long-term, short-term rental, that is.
It does have a 5-year expiration.
It's got an administrative review.
It's administrative.
Yeah, so.
Mr. DeHaan?
Ms. Oliver, you're correct. It's a 5-year expiration that does allow for an administrative review and approval. However, if conditions have changed in the application, we would more than likely bring that back if there's something that's changed. I will note, Mr. Waller, if there is a concern about the operation as has been presented to you, it may be worthwhile to explore conditions that would address maybe some of your concerns as well.
Thank you, Mr. DeHaan. Jack, do you want to add a condition to it then, so that it gets looked at?
No, I was just bringing that out, just pointing that out for this.
Okay. Anybody else? We've got a motion. Got a second from George. Mr. Alcaraz? Yes, Mr. Don?
I remember this application from before, and I think I made the statement that in our previous discussions on short-term rentals for the last 2 or 3 years, this is one of them. One of the scenarios that came up was we had people in the military who get deployed, and they like to be able to rent their homes out to get money to help pay the mortgage while they're at sea or whatever. And I think this is one that meets that criteria, so I plan to support the application.
Great. Anybody else? If not, we're going to go ahead and call for the question, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Alvarez? Yes. Commissioner Barnes is absent. Commissioner Costin?
Yes.
Commissioner Graham's absent. Commissioner Horsley?
Yes.
Commissioner Inman absent. Commissioner Klein?
Yes.
Commissioner Redmond's absent. Commissioner Wall?
Yes.
Vice Chair Weiner? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Oliver?
Yes.
By a vote of 7-0, you have approved this application as amended.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. At this point, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got mixed emotions about this application, primarily because it's not within the area that Mr. Wood and I are working on as far as overlay districts for short-term rentals. However, that's not the code right now or the ordinance right now. So,
Talk into the mic.
I say, however, that's not the code or the ordinance right now, so I think we have to deal with it on the basis of what it is right now. Given the fact that the applicant is away from his home on deployment in the military and states at least that he intends to come back and live in this locale, and that I haven't had any opposition from any of the immediate neighbors around this particular location about this particular application. I'm going to move for approval, subject to the 2 people per bedroom condition and 1 rental per week.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
I have mixed emotions too, but I don't think we can legally make those exceptions that wouldn't apply to everybody, so I'll have to vote no.
Did you? No, thank you. Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 10 to 1, you have approved the application of Timothy Handlin.
Okay, thank you all very much. That concludes the planning items. Mr. Vice Mayor, we're on to appointments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move or nominate the following individuals for boards and commissions to the Convention and Visitor Bureau Community Task Force: Elizabeth Bauman, Henry Richardson, Bruce Thompson, Laura Huber, Jeannie Evans Cox, Zon Borden, Charles Thornton, Preston Midget, Gary Ryan, Randy Vogel, Tage Counts, Courtney Dyer, Diana Howard, and Robert Malati. To the Agricultural Advisory Commission, William Vaughn. To the Bikeways and Trails Advisory Committee, William Vaughn, representing Agricultural Advisory Committee. To the Historic Preservation Commission, Finley Brocky. To the Parks and Recreation Commission, Akeem Prosser for the Rose Hall District. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, at this point, go ahead and call for the vote.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye, with the exception of Mr. Bruce Thompson. That's a nay.
Thank you, Mr. Moss. Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11 to 0, noting Mr. Moss's nay vote for Mr. Thompson, you have approved the appointments.
Okay, is there any unfinished business? Just in terms of new business, I just wanted to thank the Planning Commission for the cooperative effort here, along with our great planning department, Mr. DeHaan and company, for dealing with the situation in a very responsible and professional way. And I would also like to thank City Clerk Amanda Barnes and Mr. Dehaney, the staff, for putting this together under significant challenges and to make it a good process. And that being said, we are going to adjourn and get ready for open mic. And once again, thank you to the Planning Commission.